This talk is intended for the 4th year English specialization student of University of Distance Education. The module number is Eng-4109, Public Speaking and Presentation Skills. This skill is an important one for the students. In my talk, I will present benefits of the public speaking course and formal speaking. Let's start now. If you are smart and hardworking, can you expect to succeed in a business, professional, or technical career? Not necessarily. Say, Mitch Costanza, a business entrepreneur in Escondido, California. You may have brilliant ideas that you want to share, but if you don't develop and use your speaking skills, then you have all this knowledge locked up within a body that cannot communicate. It means your ideas to someone else. To succeed in any field, Costanza says, you must have the ability to stand on your feet, either on a one-to-one basis or before a group, and make a presentation that is convincing and believable. Now, I will start benefits of a public speaking course. Many college graduates look back on all the courses they took in college and say that public speaking was one of the most valuable. Here are some of the reasons why this course is considered so important. 1. You learn how to speak to a public audience. Knowing how to stand up and give a talk to a group of people is a rewarding skill you can use throughout your life. 2. You learn skills that apply to one-on-one communication. Although the emphasis of this course is on speaking to groups, the principles that you learn also apply to communication with individuals. 3. You develop the oral communication skills that are prized in the job market. When you go to a job interview, which of the following is most likely to influence the employer when he or she decides whether to hire you? Research shows that oral communicating skills is the correct answer. A finding that surprises many students. Surely, technical knowledge in the field is the most important factor for jobs in science and technology, isn't it? Not according to employers. Scientists, engineers, and technicians can be brilliant in their fields, but if they cannot communicate effectively with colleagues and the public, they are not valuable employees. That's why most employers rank the ability to speak well and listen intelligently as the most highly prized of all skills when it comes to hiring employees. These are precisely the skills that you can develop in a public speaking class. 4. You practice and gain experience in an IT laboratory. Just as carpenters become expert in their trade by learning woodworking skills and then practicing them, effective speech makers become adept by learning certain skills and then practicing them. The classroom is a good laboratory for practicing your skills because 1. It is an unthreatening setting. No one will deny you a job or a raise on the basis of your classroom speeches. And 2. Your audience is friendly and sympathetic, made up of students who must go through the same experience. Extremely valuable to you are the critiques given by your instructor. 5. You gain self-confidence. Giving a public speech is one of the most difficult tasks in life. So, if you learn to do it well, you gain an extraordinary amount of self-assurance. Speaking and communicating are not the same thing. You can speak to a listener, but if the listener does not understand your message, in the way you meant it to be understood. You have failed to communicate it. According to Hitachi Limited of Japan, communication is not simply sending a message. It is creating true understanding, swiftly, clearly, and precisely. In examining how speech communication works, we will look at two speaking situations, formal and informal. A model of the speech communication process in formal speaking situations. In the context of a particular situation, the speaker creates a message and sends it via a channel to the listener, who interprets it and sends feedback via a channel to the speaker. The speaker must then interpret the feedback and may need to respond to the listener immediately by modifying the presentation, explaining a concept in a different way. For example, interference is whatever impedes accurate. I will explain formal speaking. There are 7 components of the speech communication process. 1. Speaker. When you are a speaker, you are the source or originator of a message that is transmitted to a listener. Whether you are speaking to a dozen people or 500, you bear a great responsibility for the success of the communication. The key question that you must constantly ask yourself is not, am I giving out good information or am I performing well? But rather, am I getting through to my listeners? And when you get through to your listeners, when you engage their hearts and minds, make sure you give them a worthwhile message. 2. Listener. The listener is the recipient of the message sent by the speaker. As we have noted, the true text of communication is not whether a message is delivered by the speaker, but whether it is accurately received by the listener. No matter how eloquent the speaker, no matter how dynamic the speaker's delivery, if the listener's minds don't receive and interpret the message correctly, the desired communication has failed to take place. While speakers share part of the responsibility for communication, listeners also must bear some of the burden. They must try hard to pay attention to the speaker, fighting off the temptation to daydream or think about personal concerns. They must listen with an open mind, avoiding the tendency to prejudge the speaker or discount the speaker's views without a fair hearing. 3. Message. The message is whatever the speaker communicates to the listener. The message is sent in the form of symbols, either verbal or non-verbal. Verbal symbols are words. It's important for you to recognize that words are not things. They are symbols of things. Non-verbal symbols are what you convey with your tone of voice, eyes, facial expression, gestures, postures, and appearance. Everything that you express in a message is in the form of symbols. When listeners receive messages, they must interpret the symbol, that is, make sense out of the speaker's verbal and non-verbal symbols. This process can cause misunderstanding and confusion because symbols are only an approximation of reality. As a speaker, you should strive to use symbols that will cause the listener to arrive at a meaning that is as close as possible to the one in your mind. Don't say, smoking may cause you a lot of trouble. The vague verbal symbols at the end of the sentence. A lot of trouble might be interpreted by some listeners to mean coughing, by others to mean stained teeth, or by still others to mean cancer. Be specific. Smoking may cause lung cancer. When you use abstract words like socialism, feminism, and censorship, you must be especially careful to define precisely what you mean, because listeners often have their own, widely varying interpretations. The term censorship might mean stepping out filth to some listener and total government control of the press to others. Ideally, the two types of symbols, verbal and nonverbal, are harmonious, but when they are not, the listeners receive a mixed message. The solution to this problem is to make sure the nonverbal part of your message reinforces rather than contradicts the verbal part. In other words, smile and use a friendly tone of voice when you say, "I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight." 4. Channel. The channel is the medium used to communicate the message. A speech can reach an audience by means of a variety of channels: radio, television, a public address system, or direct voice communication. For public speaking in the classroom, your primary channel is auditory, your voice, accompanied by a visual channel: gesture, facial expression, visual aids. For some speeches in the workplace, you may have a public address system. This channel can be very effective if the system works well and the acoustics in the room are good, because it enables you to speak in an easy conversational style without having to raise your voice. Probably unaware of what he was doing, one college professor, during his lecture, would roll his tie all the way up to his collar, release it, and then roll it up again. Students in the class were distracted by this habit. One day, they even made bets on how many times he would roll the tie up during class. Such distracting mannerism and foibles can mark your speech making, and you may not even be aware of what you are doing. While feedback is valuable for pinpointing delivery problems, it is even more important as a way to assess the content of your speech. Are your remarks enlightening or confusing to the listeners? You strive to get both positive and negative input so that you can keep the good while eliminating the bad. Here are 4 good methods. 1. Ask several friends or colleagues for a critique of your speech. Don't make an imprecise request like, "Tell me how I do on this," because your evaluators will probably say at the end of your speech, "You did fine, good speech," regardless of what they thought of it, to avoid hurting your feelings. Instead, give them a speech assignment. Please make a note of at least 3 things that you like about the speech and my delivery, and at least 3 things that you feel need improvement. Now your listeners know they can be frank and not worry about hurting your feelings. As a result, you are likely to get helpful feedback. 2. Pass out evaluation forms to all your listeners. Ask them to make comments anonymously and then drop the forms in a box near the exit. The form can contain the request mentioned above, or you can create your own items. 3. Invite a small group of listeners to sit down with you after a meeting to share their reactions. This is especially useful in finding out whether the listeners understood and accepted your message. Try to listen and learn without becoming argumentative or defensive. 4. Have a presentation videotaped. Invite colleagues to watch the tape with you and help you evaluate it, because many people are never pleased with either themselves or their speeches on videotapes. Colleagues can often provide objectivity. Feedback. Feedback is the response that the listener gives the speaker. Sometimes it is verbal, as when a listener asks questions or makes comments during a lecture. In most public speeches and certainly in the ones you will give in the classroom, listener refrain from giving verbal feedback until the question and answer period at the end of the speech. Listener also give non-verbal feedback. If they are smiling and nodding their heads, they are obviously in agreement with your remarks. If they are frowning and sitting with their arms folded, they more than likely disagree with what you are saying. If they are yawning and looking at you with a gazed expression, they are probably bored or weary. A yawn, wrote English author G.K. Chesterton, is a silent shout. If you receive negative feedbacks, try to help your listeners. If, for example, you are explaining a concept, but some of your listeners are shaking their heads and giving you looks that seem to say, "I don't understand," try again using different words to make your ideas clear. Interference. Interference is anything blocks or hinders the accurate communication of a message. There are three types. External interference arises outside the listener. Someone coughing, a baby crying, people talking loudly in the hall, or an air conditioning breakdown that leaves the listener hot and sticky and preoccupied with their discomfort. Internal interference comes from within the listener. Some listeners might be daydreaming or worrying about a personal problem. Some might be too tired to expend mental energy on listening. As a speaker, you can help listeners overcome internal distraction by making your speech so lively and interesting that the audience feels compelled to listen to you. Speaker-generated interference occurs when the speaker uses words that are unfamiliar to the audience or that are interpreted in a way that the speaker did not intend. If the speaker wears bizarre clothing, some listener might scrutinize the attire instead of concentrating on the speech. Sometimes, listeners will strive to overcome interference. For example, straining to hear the speaker words over the noise of a truck rolling down the street outside. At other times, though, some listeners will fail to make the extra effort and no communication takes place. Situation. The situation is the context, the time and place in which communication occurs. Different situations call for different behavior by both speaker and listener. In an entertaining after-dinner speech at a convention, jokes would be appropriate. In some settings, listeners can cheer and clap, but at other times, they must remain silent. Time of day plays a part in how receptive an audience is. Many listeners, for example, tend to be sluggish and sleepy between 3 and 5 p.m. If you give a presentation during that period, make it lively. If your speech is a long one, you might invite listeners to stand up and stretch at the halfway point to shake off their sleepiness. When you prepare a speech, find out as much as possible about the situation. Where will the speech be given, indoors or outdoors? What is the nature of the occasion? How many people are likely to be present? By assessing these variables in advance, you can adapt your speech to make it appropriate to the situation. I will end my topic now. Please don't forget to study your text and guide thoroughly. Good luck for your exam.